Good morning, good people, brothers, sisters, and beautifully defiant siblings in the movement. Welcome to the unapologetic voice of labor, equity, and action. This is CWA Our Power radio show, where we amplify the organizers, uplift the everyday workers, and honor the giants whose shoulders we stand on right here on KYOK 1140 AM and 106.5 FM in the heart of Houston, Texas. If you're rolling through H-Town or just fired up anywhere in the world, stream us live at kyokradio.org on the CWA Strong app or catch the replay anytime by searching CWA Hour of Power on your favorite podcast player. Because this space, this time, it's about us. That's right, it's about us. We're talking union contracts, organizing victories, labor rights, human dignity, fair pay, and bold everyday resistance to injustice in all its forms. So whether you're on the job, in your car, at the kitchen table, or deep in your fight, lean in, honk your horns if you stand with the workers. Throw a fist up if you know your worth. Joining me today are the truth tellers and the fire starters, Mikeya Jones, Reginald Small, Timya Wiley, Tay Akins, and David Marshall. So buckle up, beloveds, because this power, the power we build together, the power is ours. Let's get into it. Our union voices are ringing in every district from Alaska to Maine, Texas to Minnesota, Canada to Puerto Rico, because we don't play at CWA. The Communication Workers of America invites you to the 2026 National Human Rights Conference happening August 16th through the 19th in Atlanta, Georgia. Join union leaders and activists from across the country as we come together to build power, advance justice, and fight for workers' rights. And this year's conference will be held at the beautiful Westin Peachtree Plaza, located in the heart of downtown Atlanta. To register, visit cwahumanrights.com. Again, to register, visit cwahumanrights.com. Don't miss this opportunity to connect, learn, and organize for a stronger, more just future. We'll see you in Atlanta. This month on CWA Our Power Radio, we're highlighting young voices, real power, the next generation of organizing, because the fight for justice isn't waiting on age, it's being led right now. This week, we spotlight a powerful young voice in the global fight for clean water, Autumn Peltier. Autumn Peltier is an indigenous water protector who has taken her message all the way to the world stage, even addressing the United Nations. But her mission is simple and urgent. Clean water is a human right. And while corporations profit and infrastructure fails, communities, especially indigenous and working class communities, are left behind. Autumn reminds us that water isn't political, it's survival. For union workers, especially those connected to public utilities and infrastructure, this hits home. Who controls resources? Who maintains them? And who gets left out? And that's why organizing matters. This week, ask yourself, what are we protecting? And who are we protecting it for? Because young voices like Autumn Peltier are showing us real power starts with speaking up. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM in the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting the kyokradio.org and pressing the Listen Live option. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Search for CWA Hour of Power on your favorite podcast player. Search for CWA Hour of Power. Don't forget that. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Up next, we have the Tea with Tay. Good morning, Tay.
Good morning, Errol. Good morning, KYOK listeners, and good morning to my union family. Today's tea, this is about human rights. Today's tea is bold, a little bitter, and hard to swallow. Like oversteeped black tea with a sharp splash of lemon, because what we're about to talk about has been sitting too long, and now the truth is coming out strong. So, welcome back, everyone, to Tea with Tay, where we don't just sip, we spill. Today's conversation is not light, it is not entertainment, it is not opinion for the sake of reaction. Today, we're talking about what is happening right now and what it means on a human level. I want to be clear, very clear. This is not about politics. This is not about political parties. This is not about choosing sides. This is about human rights. This is about peace. And most importantly, this is about children. Because what we're witnessing right now in this current war is not just conflict, it is real time human loss. Across modern conflicts, we continue to see the same pattern. Within weeks, thousands of civilians are killed or injured, and children consistently make up a significant portion of those casualties. At the same time, millions of people are displaced, families are forced to leave their homes with little to nothing, children are being pulled out of schools, communities are being destabilized overnight. When we talk about war, we cannot reduce it to strategy or headlines. We have to acknowledge what it actually looks like. It looks like children caught in the crossfire. It looks like families being separated. It looks like hospitals overwhelmed with injuries they cannot keep up with. It looks like entire communities living in fear, not knowing what tomorrow will bring. And while all of that is happening, we have to ask ourselves a real question. What are we choosing to focus on? We're talking about gas prices. We're talking about markets. We're talking about inconvenience. I'm going to say this clear. You can recover financially. You can rebuild an economy, but you cannot restore a life. You cannot bring back a child. You cannot undo this kind of loss. You cannot reverse that trauma that flows. And this is what is not being centered enough in the conversation. The casualties of war on all sides, because war doesn't take from one group of people, it takes from everyone. It takes from civilians, it takes from children, it takes from family, and it leaves behind damage that does not disappear when the conflict ends. We have to also acknowledge another reality. War does not only impact the places where it is happening, it impacts the people being sent into it. Our troops are being deployed. Young men or women placed in dangerous and uncertain conditions. These are individuals with families, with futures, and with lives that matter. And this brings up another difficult but necessary question. People are asking whether war is necessary or whether it is being carried out with clear authorization and accountability. When lives are at stake, those questions are not extreme, they are responsible. From where many people are standing, this is a little confusing, where the cost in human life is way too high. For others, it raises concerns about whether this is an unauthorized war or one that lacks clarity, transparency, or shared understanding. This is not a political statement. Those are human concerns because the real issue is not left versus right. The real issue is the difference between life and loss, accountability and silence, humanity and destruction. For the people living through this is not a debate. This is survival. Children are now growing in trauma. Families are grieving in real time. People are losing everything they have built. And we are all watching it happen. We have to ask ourselves a serious question. Why are we not centering that? Why are we more comfortable discussing the financial impact than the human cost? Because the truth is, financial systems can recover, countries can rebuild, but a life cannot be replaced. I also want to be clear about something else. This is not about being against any country, any group, or any individual. This is about being pro-human. This is about recognizing that no matter where a war is happening, children deserve safety, family deserves peace, and people deserve the right to live. Because if we reach a point where we can watch this level of suffering and still place everything else above it, then we have to ask ourselves, what are we becoming? So, no, for me, this is not gas prices. This is not about political talking points. This is about the real cost of this war. It is about the lives being lost, and it is about the families being broken. It is about the children being impacted right now in real time because money can come back. Nations can rebuild. But once a life is gone, it's gone. Once again, this is not politics. This is humanity. This was Tea with Tay today. And as I said, I know it was going to be a little strong, but we must continue to talk about pro-human, human rights. Thank you to the KYOK listeners. Thank you to my union families. And it's back to you, Errol.
Thank you so much, Tay Akins. And that was a hot piece. Thank you for writing that piece. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and pressing the listen live option. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Search for CWA Our Power on your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Up next, we have the Marshall Minutes. Good morning, David Marshall.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, family, and welcome to the Marshall Minute. Now, today, I'm going to talk about dealing with conflicts, and not just any old conflicts, conflicts between union members. Now, conflict is very common in the workplace. Disagreements with management over workplace conditions, over how the contract should be interpreted, or our member has been treated. These are all normal and expected by most stewards and union representatives. But what happens when that conflict is between members? That's a different story. Conflict is a common occurrence in the lives of stewards and union representatives, and many of us are uncomfortable dealing with it. But the consequences of not dealing with it can be serious. And even though the conflict appears insignificant at first, it could actually build into something else. So let me ask everyone this morning, have y'all seen situations where the conflict between members got out of hand?
Oh, absolutely. And most of these times it starts small, miscommunication, tone, something taken the wrong way, and it just builds and builds.
Okay.
And then you have the people don't address it early enough. They sit in it, and then by the time it comes out, it's already bigger than what it should have been.
Well, and that's so true, Tay, because the conflict is a normal part of working life. But when we don't deal with it, it escalates. And people end up getting disciplined, or management steps in and imposes a solution that nobody wants.
Well, and then David, I think we have to really take a look at who's the fight with. I mean, if we're busy internally fighting with each other, we lose focus on who's the fight really with. And I mean, when we in certain situations, I guess management actually thrives on our division.
Exactly. And that's why it matters. So, that's why I'd like to break this down and, let's talk about what actually causes these member to member conflicts.
So I think it starts off with poor communication. And then sometimes a whole entire lack of communication. That's just my opinion.
That's
Well,
true, but go ahead.
no, go ahead, Timmy.
No, I was just gonna say that it's true, but at some point you've got to come out of your comfort zone. You have to be able to give and receive constructive criticism.
Right. Everybody wants honesty until it's time to hear it. Growth doesn't happen in comfort.
So we're basically talking about personality differences, communication issues, but what else? What other things?
Well, one of the things, David, that I have seen, people don't like direct communication. They want you to sugarcoat things. And then when it's not, if your feelings get hurt.
Palatable. Hello.
Oh, the dead is arisen. Hey, Suge, come on in here. And the other thing is seniority, the work styles, how a job gets done. Uh, and let's not ignore it, because we have to bring this in here as well, because we are a human rights show. Racism, sexism, disrespect, those things are real in the workplace. And don't ever think you won't see those in the workplace, because they do come up. And if you see them in the workplace, you also will see them. Go ahead.
I have to step backwards 2 steps to something you said, Errol, about sugarcoating. But I actually think that union people naturally, in most cases, are strong personalities, strong-willed, and outspoken. But we need to focus a little bit more on 2 things. Number one, meeting people where they are. That all people are not going to be just this knock them in the face, let's fight about it. They're not that. So if you're coming in with that attitude, you can push people away. So we need to learn to meet people where they are and spend a little bit more time on this piece that I would call conflict resolution, not just acknowledging that there's a conflict or issues, but to be more focused as leaders on how to actually resolve that and meet in some commonality.
Sound like you want to sugarcoat it.
I agree.
I don't.
Sugarcoat it, dilute
I don't.
it, dip it in fudge, do something that's gonna just water it down, and you walk away from the problem. And at the end of the day, you spent your time trying to figure out how not to offend somebody as opposed to addressing the conflicts. I think that there's something called healthy confrontation. And I think if the goal is to resolve the issue, then it don't matter, or it shouldn't matter what route we take or what tone we take to get there. It takes a very small person to focus on somebody's tone when they're addressing a problem.
But tone may
tone
not
makes a difference
tone
now,
makes a big difference. It may not matter to you, but the person you're talking to, it matters a whole lot. And they done turned you off if your tone is not right.
Correct, but you said that we're supposed to be focused on the problem, right? And we're doing conflict resolution. At the end of the day, if we're going to say that you have to meet people where they are, right, that goes both ways. It's not a one-way street. Everybody has feelings. And clearly, if there's a conflict, you're both on different ends of the spectrum. So if somebody else is upset and their upset comes out differently, that doesn't automatically mean now that you get to turn off either. And so, again, in my opinion, if the goal is to get a resolution and solve a problem, yes, the tone might be, you might be taken aback by it, right? But that means that you're now no longer focused on the problem. If you want to resolve an issue, you have to focus on the problem. So that's all I'm saying. Nobody's ever going to like somebody's tone. I personally don't like passive aggressive tones. I don't like when people come and whisper and coddle to me and talk to me. I feel like they're being condescending and talking down to me. I personally prefer somebody to be more straightforward and let me know what it is that, that the issue is in a real way. And so you can't automatically assume that meeting somebody where they are or trying to resolve a conflict is always covered in niceties.
Well,
a wise man once told me, God rest his soul, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Come on, Reginald.
Well, I think most of our internal problems are generated by not what was said, but how it was said and the tone. So that creates a whole nother something when we're not willing to acknowledge that perhaps we need to change that in order to come up with the resolution to fix the problem, when the problem often is our tone and our attitude. That is that's half of the problem.
And I think
David got messy and started this all this morning.
I'm just going to say, I think everybody is right. There are so many different angles. the thing is, some conflicts are individual, but some of them are bigger. And those bigger ones require organizing, not just a mediation. So I wanted to talk real quick, about, solutions. So, now let's talk solutions. As union leaders and stewards, what do we do when two members are in conflict?
Well, according to Reginald, first you got to make sure everybody got a juice box and we in the reading corner on a nice comfy carpet and everybody feel good. Light a candle and some incense, set the mood and make sure everybody's okay. And then
Well, if
once
you're gonna burn
everybody's
some
okay,
incense,
once
burn it.
everybody's okay and in a calm tone, then we can maybe articulate our feelings.
You, you have,
It's called communication, effective communication.
or maybe she need
Well,
to just come to a meeting on a Thursday night, the last Thursday of the month in Dallas, and we'll test that theory out.
I mean, hey,
right. She could come to my local too. So
I'm just
We need,
regurgitating what you guys
we,
said to me, that we
we,
have to
we
make
need,
sure our tones are right and nice.
and we
I,
need a,
okay, so
I
so
do,
so the
I
first
do. Wait a minute, Errol. Hold a line. I do believe that we do need to check ourselves with our tone and make sure that we have the right intent. Now, and I'm coming from a place of union leadership. When people come to us in bad spirits and bad tones, we can't get with them if we want to still continue to run a union. It's not going to work that way. At some point, somebody has to, if we're talking, and I'm speaking here from conflict, from a point of conflict resolution, not furthering the conflict, but I'm talking about resolving it in order to get the business of the day handled and to run a union with collective power, meaning involving more than just me or more than just you.
You just proved my point for me. You literally said if somebody comes to you some kind of way, right, that you don't like, you don't get with them. You focus on what the problem is and you decide that you want to, like you said, move this forward and solve the problem. That's what I'm saying. We're not focusing on tone here, right? At the end of the day, if you want a resolution, it don't matter what package it's delivered it to you in, you will try to find a resolution. That's all I was saying, honey. Carry on.
we're gonna disagree with you on that because tone is 99% in me and Reginald's opinion necessary, or it's critical to how people accept what you're saying. But anyway,
I
we
mean,
can't
when you go
ignore
to,
whatever the problem is.
now, I think we're in some ways perhaps saying the same thing, but I just and we've had some situations here. It takes a whole lot of different personalities to make up anything organized, and a union is organized. So we've had some personal situations here, even in this local over the years, that David and I could talk about that. Where one personality wants to hit it head on, and the it takes more than one kind of personality, and that doesn't mean to wash something and sweeten everything. But I think what I have discovered is that most people need to be heard, and if they done turned you off, if the tone and the attitude isn't right, in order to get to the resolution part, you got to listen and try to get the tone in the right place so that all parties around the table can actually listen.
so that
And
like
I
when you
think
actually have something like you have a conflict pretty much resolved and somebody comes up and just jacks that all up. like somebody that likes to, hit it in the mouth, it just jacks up all the work and coddling that was done in a matter of seconds.
it does. And for me, I'm a Southern girl. Y'all know me. When I have a conversation with somebody and it may not be the best, we may not be on the same terms, I'm constantly checking and reevaluating my tone and checking to see if they're listening and they're actually hearing, because maybe I need to stop talking. I think that that's a part of effective communication too, is to be able to gauge and know your audience. And that's all I got to say.
All I have to say is tone matters a lot, a lot, a lot, because that's how I gauge everything. Okay, so why are you talking to me in that tone? My tone changes.
That's
All right,
so
David,
true.
you're solution
Well,
driven. Come on, now let's get to
well,
the end of
well,
this
well,
right here because y'all get quiet.
No, I think,
well,
like I said, I'm from the Northeast. And we're very straightforward. And it's not rude or disrespectful. It's if this is the problem, are we going to try to have a solution for the problem, or are we going to try to talk about other stuff? And I think that that's another thing too that people don't like to acknowledge is the fact that different cultures, different mannerism, different demographics, upbringings, like Reginald said, that all takes place into how you're perceived. Because again, if you're in the Northeast, you might say something and nobody cares, nobody bats an eyelashes, nobody thinks that it's rude. If you say that same thing somewhere in the South, somebody can take offense to that. If you say some type of Southern things and you say that in the West Coast in California, that might be offensive. So those are things that you need to consider. And so that's what I'm saying, where for me, it's not always gonna be the tone for me. For me, it's gonna be whether or not they're really trying to solve a problem. And that's I think what maybe I'm not articulating it correctly enough in this conversation, but my whole thing is if everybody, like Reginald said and David said, if everyone is focused on the actual outcome and the actual goal and an actual resolution, you should not be able or allow yourself to get caught up in things that really don't matter, okay? Because when people are upset, they're upset, right? And we're here to solve a problem. We're here to get you out of that space. And so if I'm still focused on the fact that you're angry or you're crying or despondent or whatever that situation is, the emotionality of it all, that is not, now I'm not focused on what we're here to be focused on. I'm no longer focused on the problem. I'm focused on your emotional state. And we're not therapists at the same time. We got to pick a role. And at
Well,
the end
we
of the
Well,
day,
listen,
at the
we
end of the,
aren't
hold on, I'll
therapists.
be finishing this. I'll be finishing in a second. At the end of the day, if this conversation is about solving a problem and a conflict, that's one thing. But what we can't do is decide that we're going to start therapizing people in the middle of something, and now we're away from the problem, and we still have to come back to it. And then now we got to go make sure the other person feelings is okay because they saw me sitting here with this one, and now they feel like I'm taking this one side, and it gets blown out of proportion.
Well, and that's why you can't ignore the problem. You know,
Correct.
you can't let people just keep running over each other like it's okay, because you'll lose control of the culture, and at that point you've lost control of the situation. So the first step, let's not avoid it. Let's address it. But then what's next? You know, you got to talk to people separately first. You got to let them be heard without any interruption. And then, you know, because people feel heard, they'll calm down. And half the time, people, you know, that's all they want is just acknowledgement. And when you bring them together, you know, with structure, you know, you got to make sure you bring them together with structure, because if you don't set ground rules, you know, like no interpreting, no name calling, it's going to turn into the same argument all over again. So
mm,
let's bring everybody in the room, you know, and Errol, you know, if I bring all of
yes,
us in the room, what are we now doing?
I you,
we're
you know, I
we're
got a
trying
quick.
to.
I just need to jump in there real quick. I look at communication like code switching. We all know what code switching is. If you're talking to an emotional person, you need to code switch and be on their level. Especially, we're all labor leaders here, and as labor leaders, you have to be able to effectively communicate with somebody in order to for them to understand where you're coming from, and you to be able to understand where they're coming from in order to reach a decision or get to the same goal. That's all I'm saying. It's just like code switching.
Now, David, you asked me that question. Now, I'll be honest. I'm going to be honest about this. When you call us together in a room, if what the main goal should be that we're listening. But I'm gonna tell you, while I'm angry, don't try to talk to me.
Do you turn green and get bigger?
Man, I'll be so ready. I'm just telling the truth about it.
Well,
And
and
I
let's be
think
real,
in
you know,
any, I think in any situation, in any conflict, right? In any conflict, the whole entire goal is to get to the resolution. That should be the focus. And so when you bring these people into the, if you already, like y'all said, if y'all already, softened everybody's tone, everybody's calm now, everybody's okay, we've done code switched or whatever, and you bring people back together now, then the outcome should be resolution, right? At this point, you should be in there to figure out how you guys move forward. I would
Not all
think.
the time, Mikeya, because there are some folks that you try to get a resolution with, and they're stuck. They're still mad.
Because
But
some
Mikeya,
folks don't want resolution. They just want to be right. And I think
right.
that's where the
Got it.
problem is,
Yeah.
you know. And
To Mikeya's point, after you've done all of that, yes, you should be able to move on to the resolution. But often what happens is there there's really not a problem after you've gotten all of that done. They've been heard, and oftentimes they're done. They've moved on because it was all about just being heard. So she's right. Once you have done all that, established the atmosphere, and y'all have got your stuff on the table, how can we resolve it? So this has been a wonderful, absolutely wonderful conversation, David. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Thank you.
well,
And then I think we might need to
do
go through how to resolve things by generation. That might be a good show too.
Now, see, you getting messy now, but
so I guess I know this is going on a little bit longer than normal. Do you think we should come back to this, Errol, or can
I
we
think
keep
we
going?
can. We'll work on it.
We definitely
Okay.
need to work on conflict resolution because look at the state of our world. If everybody had better conflict resolution skills, we wouldn't be at war right now, but that's just me.
But
You're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. All right, David.
all right. Well, like I said, so I can cut it right here, and then we can come back to this if we need to move on. At the end of the day, the main goal that we're that the main goal for me is to understand that, you know, conflict is often unnecessary because many disputes come from avoidable miscommunication or rigid perspectives or fear-based avoidance rather than insurmountable differences. When managed through a proactive communication and trust, conflict can be transformed into a productive, healthy debate rather than a destructive, high stress confrontation. And that's why learning some of these skills we talked about today matters, because when we handle conflict the right way, we don't just fix problems, we build stronger solidarity. So until next time, this has been the Marshall Minute, where living well is the greatest act of love. And back to you, brother.
Thank you so much, David. And all I'm going to say is my phone is buzzing left and right about this conversation and how much people needed to hear this. So thank you, David, for that piece. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and pressing the listen live option. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Search for CWA Hour of Power on your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected. Share your thoughts and join the conversation. All right, now we're going to go just a little bit deeper. We're asking a real question today, one that cuts deeper than politics. Who does America trust? And who does it make prove they belong? Because right now there's a push behind the SAVE Act, a bill that would require documented proof of citizenship just to vote in federal elections. But here's the tension. The same country has long allowed people to work, pay taxes, serve, and even fight for it, sometimes without the same level of documentation being demanded. So today we're not just talking about policy, we're talking about power. We're talking about trust. And we're talking about who gets to benefit of the doubt in America. Come on in here, Reginald.
all right, so let's lay it out clearly so that, so folks can understand what this is. The SAVE Act would basically require you to show documents like a passport, birth certificate, or naturalization papers to register to vote in federal elections. Now, on paper, people say this is about election integrity. But let's be honest, non-citizen voting is already illegal and is extremely rare. So the real question becomes, what problem is this actually solving? And here's where the contradiction actually starts to reveal itself, because while we're raising the bar to vote, there are other areas where the bar looks very, very different.
Exactly. Because for some people, this might sound real simple, just show your documents, but that's not really a reality for everybody. There are elderly people who don't have easy access to birth certificates, people whose names have changed due to marriage, folks in rural areas who have to travel and pay just to get documents. And so now we're not just talking about citizenship, we're talking about access. And when access isn't equal, the impact isn't equal.
Well, I think that we also need to acknowledge how this got started in the first place and how we were talking last week afterward, after our episode, and how David was saying that you don't even have to fill out this much documentation to fight in the US Army. And so how is it that you are able to risk your life for this country, but you can't vote in it?
And thinking about young voters coming into this, we already hear people say my vote doesn't matter. Now imagine them telling them, oh, and by the way, you need extra documentation too. You say you want engagement, but you keep raising the barrier to entry. And at some point it starts to feel like participation isn't being encouraged, it's being managed.
Right.
And you know
Everybody know
what,
your
Tay?
mother tried to keep your birth certificate underneath the mattress until you 25 anyway.
And you're absolutely correct. And I've heard that even when I was trying to get individuals to register to vote, they would come back and say my vote doesn't matter, and I'm like, yes, it does. And that idea of really who's managing or who of managing who participate, that's not new in this country at all.
Well, and I mean, at some point it gets ridiculous because we're repeating the same
Right.
thing. I mean, voting should be easier. It should be something that's commonplace. But now it's like if you look back at American history, let's go there. There is a pattern. I mean, of course, we know we've had the Jim Crow laws, still suffering from that. You had
Yes.
poll taxes in the United States. You had
Hmm.
literacy tests. I mean, you're counting beans in a jar in order to test. I mean, in
How
order to
many bubbles
vote.
and soap?
Yeah,
Hmm.
all of that's all foolish stuff, but that's all stuff that impeded voting for certain people. So each time we've had any of the above mentioned, the method sounded neutral, but the impact was not neutral. So the question actually becomes, what's the modern version of a poll tax? What's the modern version of a literacy test? Because today it might not be a test or a tax, but if it costs money, time, and access to participate, we have to ask what it really is.
So let's talk about cost. Birth certificates, they cost money. Passports cost a little bit more money. Taking time off of work to get these documents, that costs money. So now voting, which is supposed to be a right, starts to feel like something you have to pay to access. And we've seen this before. When there's a price tied to participation, certain communities feel it more than others.
And right. So let me get this straight, right? My driver's license is good enough for me to drive to work, to pay taxes, to interact with law enforcement, to fly in a plane, but now it's not good enough for me to walk into a polling place and vote. That I just think that that sounds really selective.
Hmm. And really that idea of trust really comes into focus actually when you look at military service. And David is a veteran, so come on here, David.
Well, as a veteran, I need to say this plainly. And Mikeya, was right when we said we talked about this last week after the show. We have folks that have served in the United States Armed Forces that are not citizens. People that put their lives on the line for this country. I've served with those folks, and I've even had some that received their citizenship while on active duty, and even in some instances on deployment in a war zone. But then we have others that have honorably served that still haven't been able to get their citizenship that have been deported during this current administration. So, I mean, it's definitely that is going to have to be fixed. I just don't believe you can serve this country and put your life on the line, but then still not be a citizen. But then we also have stuff like, the selective service system, where young men are required to register, often with just basic identifying information, not passport level proof. Now, I think that's rich. I got to jump through hoops with passports and birth certificates to vote. But I just need to be 18 and automatically I'm good to get drafted and serve during wartime. So let that sink in. Uh, but historically, during times like the Vietnam War, people were sent to fight under systems that didn't look anything like what we're talking about now. So, here's the main issue for me. We trust you to fight for democracy. We trust you to defend this country. But now we're saying we don't trust you to participate in the democracy without jumping through extra hoops. Now, I've seen people willing to die for this country who would struggle to meet some of these requirements. And that should really concern everybody.
And first, I'd like to say thank you to all of those who serve. Definitely
Yes.
want to say that.
Yes.
So then what does citizenship really look like, y'all? Is it about contribution? Is it about sacrifice? Or is it about paperwork? Because right now it feels like paperwork is winning.
So, and if we take it another step further, we know that in many places, people with felony records face barriers to voting. At the same time, we see people in position of power who navigate legal issues and still maintain great influence. So every day people can lose access, but power doesn't always work the same way at the top. That raises a real question for me. Is accountability equal?
Yeah, because
And beyond policy, go ahead, Errol. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was just talking about somebody using the mail to mail in their ballot, but come on, Timmy.
Okay, and bone spurs not to fight, but okay.
And I'm just gonna say,
I have absolutely no idea what y'all are talking about.
Beyond the policy, there's something else. It's fear and confusion. And when you make voting more complicated, people start second guessing themselves. They want to know, do I have the right documents? Am I going to get turned away? And some people just won't show up at all. It causes anxiety for some people, and they just won't show up. That's
But I wonder,
about.
Timmy, is that the whole purpose?
Absolutely.
Organized
Absolutely.
chaos.
Yes, absolutely. That is the playbook.
Right. And in all honesty, I think that star ID is a bunch of crap too.
The what?
The star,
the real ID.
The real ID.
Oh.
But I thought, and just hear me out, even though you said that you think it's crap, you had to have either a passport or birth certificate or two of those forms of ID anyway to get the real ID to get that star put on the real ID. And then now that's required for you to fly domestically. And so my whole thing is, if I needed those same documents, right, to get that star put on my ID, why isn't that sufficient? If you had to verify,
yes.
Yeah, if you had to verify those things in order for me to get that star, why isn't the ID with that star sufficient to vote? Why do I now need to carry all of my most important documents with me around to do that? And then I'm thinking, like Timmy said, with the fear of it, it's not necessarily like just fear of like attack. It's fear of like, what if somebody pickpockets you or you lose these documents while you're in these lines for hours? Like, that's your whole entire identity just sitting there on you, and you just standing there in a line with all of these other people, and all of you are sitting there with all of your information.
Well, you should be more responsible.
It brings me to another thought that, okay, if you want us to have all of this, when are we going to make that just free? That this stuff doesn't cost anything. So basically, we have to pay, once again, to actually participate in the democratic process of voting.
That it costs. So let's bring it back. Why does it feel like participation is treated as more dangerous than service? And why does it feel like some people are trusted automatically and then others have to keep proving themselves?
Well, and here's where we get to the part where we don't just point out the problems. We're going to talk about the solutions. First, automatic voter registration. If you like Mikeya was saying, if you're already in the system, taxes, DMV, you should be registered. And second, if an ID is required, then like Reggie said, it should be free, accessible, and standardized across the board. Third, we need to make documents like birth certificates easier and cheaper to obtain. If you're going to require them, you need to remove the barriers to get them. And fourth, we need to invest in a secure verification system that don't put the entire burden on the voter. And finally, we need to expand access, early voting, same day registration, make participation easier, not harder. Because at the end of the day, if we trust people to defend democracy, we should trust them to participate in it.
Mm. And so this isn't just about a bill. It's not just about a bill. It's about who gets trusted in this country and who has to prove they belong over and over and over again. That's the conversation right there. This is CWA Our Power. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and pressing the Listen Live option. Tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Search for CWA Our Power on your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Up next, we have April Awareness Month. Good morning, Mikeya.
Hi. Well, we're gonna, change tunes a little bit here and talk about something that's extremely important. And April is Autism Awareness Month. And the reason why we picked this one, honestly, it was inspired by Tay. She wanted to talk about it. So I'm gonna just talk about it a little bit. So autism is not rare, it's not abstract, and it impacts millions of individuals and families across this country every single day. And yet too many are still navigating systems that are underfunded, underprepared, and often unresponsive to their needs. And so we have to start asking the hard questions, right? Why are families still struggling to access early diagnoses and intervention services? Why are schools lacking the resources and trained staff necessary to support students on the spectrum? And why do so many adults with autism face barriers to employment, independence, and long-term stability? And to me, these aren't small gaps. These are systemic failures because in education, teachers are being asked to do more with less and less support, less funding, less training. And students with autism often are too, misunderstood, mislabeled, or left behind entirely. And so in healthcare, critical research and services remain inconsistent and for many, financially out of reach. I know I did some research a while ago because my goddaughter is autistic and Black female children are always harder to diagnose than other children. And I don't feel like that's, I feel like personally that's on purpose. And, it's disheartening and it's sad. And so and these people actually have to grow up and become part of society and civilization. And when they're not able to get the help that they need or the direction that they need, it impacts their lives in ways that we're never going to be able to really know fully. And so beyond childhood, there's a notable silence, right? Adults on the spectrum are frequently overlooked in conversations about workforce deployment, housing, and community integration. And so while awareness has increased over the years, meaningful support has not kept pace. Like we've seen people get killed because they're autistic and, emergency services don't know how to handle that or police don't know how to handle that. And this moment calls for more than symbolic gestures. It calls for responsibility. So we need responsibility from policymakers to fund research and services at sustainable levels, calls on responsibility from school systems to equip educators to support students effectively. There should be responsibility from employers to create inclusive workplaces that recognize ability and not limitation, and responsibility from communities to replace stigma with understanding. Autism is a spectrum, but dignity, access, and opportunity should not be. And this month should not just remind us that autism exists. It should challenge us to build systems that actually support the people that are living with it, because awareness is the starting point, but action is what creates change. And that's our little tidbit on autism awareness this month. Thank you, Tay, so much for bringing this to our attention. And back to you, Errol.
You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and pressing the listen live option. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Search for CWA Our Power on your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Again, don't just let me say it over and over. Go right now to Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights and stay connected with us. Up next, we have the Union Buster of the Week with Timia Wiley. Good morning, Timia.
Good morning, Errol. Good morning, KYOK listeners. I also want to say, if you go to our Facebook page or our Instagram during the show, we do monitor it. If you want to comment or chime in, please feel free. We love to have the company. But I'll digress. So this week's spotlight goes to none other than Wells Fargo, a name that's been around for generations, but so have the allegations tied to it. Now I need y'all to listen in. The coyote doesn't just howl at anything. It howls when something ain't right out on the land. And right now, something ain't right. I like them sound effects, Errol. Wells Fargo has been hit with repeated allegations that its systems, especially automated underwriting tools, have been doing more than just crunching numbers. They have been reinforcing inequality. We are talking about digital redlining. Yes, y'all, I said it. Digital redlining in 2026. That's not just history repeating itself, it's technology carrying it forward. Lawsuits from 2022 onward claim Black and Hispanic applicants were denied or delayed in mortgage refinancing, even when they had similar qualifications to white applicants. A 2020 analyst showed something real troubling. 47% of approval rate for Black homeowners, 72% approval rate for white homeowners. I'm going to read that again. A 2020 analysis showed something real troubling. 47% approval rate for Black homeowners, 72% approval rate for white homeowners. Same market, same system, different outcomes. That's not just numbers. That's access to wealth, to stability, to generational change. And if that wasn't enough, past cases like the 2012 settlement with the Department of Justice already show patterns of steering minority borrowers into worse loans. Allegations of reverse redlining suggest folks of color weren't just denied, they were targeted for higher rates, and that's not oversight. That's impact. Now here's where the coyote tilts its head, and y'all know I'm wilding like the coyote, so just saying. In August 2025, a federal court judge said over 100,000 plaintiffs couldn't move forward as a class, not because the harm wasn't real, but because it was considered common enough. So now, people have to fight individually, one by one, against a banking giant. That's not just made easy, that's justice made distant. Now let's look at it on the labor side, because the coyote sees both the field and the workers in it. Wells Fargo has also been accused of stepping hard against workers trying to organize. The Communication Workers of America filed dozens of unfair labor charges. Allegations included interrogating employees about union activity, retaliating against organizers, firing workers involved in organizing efforts. And when workers did unionize, reports in 2026 show some branches moving to decertify unions. Yes, y'all, decertify unions. Labor organizers said that didn't happen in a vacuum. It followed pressure and slow-walking contract negotiations. That's a similar playbook. Delay the contracts, divide everybody, and dismantle it. So just so you know, the coyote doesn't just howl for noise, it howls to warn the pack. When systems deny people fairness in housing and then turn around and deny workers power on the job, that's not a coincidence, that's a pattern. And patterns deserve to be called out loud. And I'm just going to say this. Just because the coyote never caught the road runner back in the day don't mean it's not going to happen now. If you're in Charlotte, we're going to be out in front of Wells Fargo down on the square. Please join us while we protest and make our voices heard. Back to you, Errol.
When?
On Wednesday at 2:00.
I think somebody sent out their call today.
Now, if we're doing sound effects, we're gonna have to talk after the show, Errol. I got some ideas.
All right. All right. As we come down to the final minutes of the show, I want to remind you that the Communication Workers of America invite you to the 2026 National Human Rights Conference happening August 16th through 19th in Atlanta. Join union leaders and activists from across the country as we come together to build power, advance justice, and fight for workers' rights. And this year's conference will be held at the beautiful Westin Peachtree Plaza, located in the heart of downtown Atlanta. To register, visit cwahumanrights.com. Again, cwahumanrights.com. Don't miss this opportunity to connect, learn, and organize for a stronger, more just future. We'll see you in Atlanta. An hour is not long enough to be with you, and a week is too long to be away from you. You have been tuned into the CWA Human Rights Hour Power broadcast. I hope something you heard today has inspired you to take action toward creating positive change in the world. Every person has the power to make a difference, no matter how small. And by working together, we can create a world where human rights are respected and valued. So I encourage each of you in the listening audience to reflect on your role in promoting human rights to effect change in your communities and beyond. Know that you are not alone in your quest for a more just and equitable world. When faced with injustice, it can be easy to lose hope and give up. But remember, justice may be slow like the truth, but when it finally comes, it will stand. Until next Thursday, 10 a.m. Central, right here on KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM KYOKradio.org. See you next week.